You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey there, reality TV fans. This is Soap Dirt, and we've got 1,000-Pound Sisters recap for you from Season 4, Episode 9, Walkin' on Eggshells. This entire episode focuses on Tammy revealing her engagement to Caleb and the family's reaction, and the reveal that she's got a super fast wedding date coming up. And then Soap Dirt's got some exclusive scoop on the wedding and what's ahead. So we're going to dig in. It's time for 1,000-Pound Sisters. The first scene, we have got some fall decorating with Amanda and Amy outside setting up some fall decor. Michael shows up, Michael Halterman, he's there. Gage is running around. Amanda's bossing Gage around, and Amy jokes that he won't listen to her while Amanda's making him her bitch. And then she laughs and says Amanda doesn't even have a husband and she's using hers like that. They break out some face paint. Gage is splattering some on Amy, and then Tammy calls. Tammy's nervous because she's got big news, and she reveals that she is engaged to Caleb. She even shows the ring, and their jaws dropped. Amy is all WTF. She thinks it's a joke. She calls Caleb a total stranger. But at the same time, Amy says that Tammy loves hard and fast, and said her sister told a guy that she loved him after an hour. An hour. What the heck? So then on 1,000-Pound Sisters, Amanda says it's fast, but Tammy says they've been together a month. And then the big kicker, she says they're getting married in 2 weeks on November 19th. This is November 19th, 2022, just so you have the timeline of when they were filming this. They ask about Caleb, and they said he's working towards surgery, and they want to leave rehab the same time. But all that seems very improbable because Tammy's already had her surgery. She's already dropped a ton of weight, and she's about to get her trach out, and she's just on the cusp of going home while Caleb is pre-op. So the sisters are all stunned. They're not happy. And Amanda's really worried because she thinks if this ends up in a divorce, Tammy will not be able to cope. Then our next big scene on 1,000-Pound Sisters, Season 4, Episode 9, is Tammy and Caleb talking about their wedding plans. Tammy's decided she wants to have the wedding at the rehab facility because they have so many friends there, and of course their friends can't go anywhere else, and it's a lot easier just to have Tammy's family come up there. The producers talk to them about honeymoon plans. Caleb's being really sweet. He says he just wants to hold her and talks about them being stuck together like glue. Tammy talks about dreaming of her wedding and the perfect man since she was little, and says this bond feels right, but her family just doesn't get it. Then we skip ahead to another scene on 1,000-Pound Sisters with Chris and Amy at the gym. Chris was at work the day that they got the call about the engagement, and so they talk about some things they have in common. Chris and Amy are still trying to lose weight. They both want to get skin removal surgery. Amy also calls it a cold day in hell because Tammy's getting married. Chris is completely stunned, and he thinks she needs to get the family's approval first. Then Amy drops the huge thing that Soap Dirt already covered, and that is that Caleb is basically a stalker. He found out online, actually a friend of his wife found out where Tammy was in rehab, and Caleb went there and got himself checked in specifically for her. Is there a fine line between romantic and stalkerish? I don't know, but the family definitely feels like Caleb has crossed it. Amy's really wondering what's up with him. Chris says it makes no damn sense, calls it BS. He's got a lot of anger, frustration, profanity, and he plans to confront Caleb Willingham with all his questions, as we'll see on 1,000-Pound Sisters. Then they talk about the two of them not being able to take care of themselves, much less each other. Scene 4 of the episode has Amy and Michael out spending some time with Gage. They take him to a little playground, and then Tammy calls with a big ask. She wants Amy Slayton to be her maid of honor, and she wants her to plan the wedding. She reminds Amy that that's exactly what she did for her when she married Michael. Amy tries to make some excuses about how her hands full now that she's got the 2 kids, but Tammy says, no excuses, bitch. Do this. So Amy agrees to take care of it, but says if there are any red flags, then that B ain't getting married. So we'll see. Amy worries, and this is a funny quote, that it'll end up in travesty. And she thinks they might change their minds about this marriage once Tammy gets home from rehab, but it'll be too late because they're married then. Scene 5 of season 4, episode 9, Thousand Pound Sisters, has part of the family heading up to the wedding. They're going up to Gibsonburg, Ohio. It's 2 weeks later, and it's the day before the wedding in this scene. We see Michael Halterman, Chris Combs, Brittany Combs, and Amy Slayton Halterman, and their 2 babies, Gage and Glenn, all in the minivan on the road to Ohio. Misty and Amanda are going to come up the night before the wedding. So the first part of the family is going to get there first, and they're going to get to meet Caleb. Chris talks about them not having a dad growing up and says it's his role to protect his sisters. And he says that's redneck Bible. So he's ready to tell Caleb what he thinks. Chris's wife, Brittany, is being a little sweeter about it. And she says sometimes when it's meant to be, you just know as soon as you meet that person. And she really wants the siblings to give Caleb the benefit of the doubt. But Amy worries that Caleb might be a serial killer and says Tammy's thinking with her cooter. Now, if you're not Southern, maybe you need a translation. Cooter is how rednecks say lady bits. So there you go. And she thinks that's what Tammy is thinking with. Then we move into the next scene on Thousand Pound Sisters tonight, which sees Tammy and Caleb waiting on family to get there. He's anxious. He knows that he will love her family, but says he doesn't know if they'll love him. She says her family is no Brady Bunch and calls them unpredictable hard asses. Then Caleb goes into a coughing fit and calls it nerve-wracking and needs to put more oxygen on his trach. So this is already stressing him out. Then Chris, Michael, Amy, and Brittany come in and they've got the babies and they hand Glenn over for Tammy to hold and feed. Then Caleb looks at it and talks about them having kids. Michael's jaw just drops open like it's a flycatcher, and Amy pulls this face like, no way, dude. And then the whole family just glares. You can just hear the crickets. It's just awkward silence. However, the first thing they want to talk about with Tammy is how great she looks. She has dropped 97 pounds since her surgery at this point. And again, this is like mid-November 2022. Amy says when they talk online that Tammy still looks big, but in person you can really see it. So these 1,000 Pound Sisters are definitely getting under 1,000 pounds for the first time because Tammy's down around 450 and Amy is around 300. So we're at 750 pound sisters. This is monumental. Chris is really proud of her, and they ask her about getting her trach out. Tammy says if she doesn't have any sleep apnea issues, then the trach will come out, and then she'll just be on regular oxygen for a while. Caleb insists that he's not too far behind, but then he tells them that he's coded twice since being in rehab. So twice they've had to bring him back from the brink of death, and he still hasn't had his gastric surgery, and he's still really heavy. So, Chris says Tammy has this future that she never expected. She went from bedridden to being on the cusp of having a normal life, but he worries about what if Caleb's always stuck in rehab? What will that mean for her? So Chris says later he wants to talk to Caleb one-on-one, and Caleb wheels out of there to get a breathing treatment to leave Tammy to talk to her sister and brother and their spouses. Amy says that he seems nice enough, but she says true colors only come out later. She's still hoping that Tammy will postpone the wedding. In scene 7 of 1,000 Pound Sisters tonight, we move into wedding preparation mode. Amy has brought several dresses for Tammy to try on, and she says she hopes one of them will fit or Tammy will have to walk down the aisle naked, and says, and I ain't seeing that. Okay. Amy starts pulling out these big long dresses, and she calls the first one a sheer tablecloth, and Tammy rejects it. Then she pulls out one and calls it an antique tablecloth, and Tammy says, I don't want to look like no damn antique table. Amy pulls out one and calls it a new tablecloth. And then she holds out one that's pure white and says, but you're not a virgin. And then Tammy goes off on her and says, if that's the case, then Amy should have been married in black. Very funny stuff between the 1,000 Pound Sisters going on. Then we get down to the final 2 choices, and it's 2 little strappy sundress numbers. And Amy has also brought clothes for Caleb. Tammy decides to try on the sundresses. The first one she gets on, Amy says, "You don't have enough titties for it." And it is kind of loose on her chest. So then she tries on the other one and calls it beyond perfect. Amy asks, "Are you saying yes to the dress?" And Tammy calls her cheesy, but then says yes to the dress. So it's all really funny. But then Amy has a tickle fit and says that she looks like a bowling pin because her trach is like a red streak going across the middle of the dress. So that's pretty funny. And Tammy says she hates all her sisters. But it's a lot of fun. Tammy thanks her, and Amy says that's the first time she's thanked me in a long time, and says they maybe need to throw holy water on her. So there's a whole bunch of laughter and humor in these episodes, which is nice, especially after episode after episode of stress and tension and, Tammy's anxiety over her weight and then her deals with therapy. So it is really nice that Tammy's family is together and that they are all being happy. Then on Thousand Pound Sisters, we go into scene 8, and this is Caleb and Chris's man-to-man talk on season 4, episode 9. Chris says he plans to put the fear of God into Caleb Willingham. He says he doesn't like the fact that he doesn't have time to get to know him, and Caleb tries to make up for that by offering some information. He says he's 39, has never been arrested, and has no criminal record. Then he asks about what he's done for work, and it turns out that Caleb has done fast food work and he has trimmed some trees. So Chris sees right away that this is a problem because it doesn't look like that they can financially support each other. He doesn't think they can medically support each other, and just calls it facts. He says the guy cannot get a job and cannot pay the bills. And then he lays into Caleb and said all they've been doing is trying to get Tammy to be self-sufficient, and says if he doesn't get healthy, then Tammy will be stuck taking care of them. And that's not what he wants for his sister. He wants his sister to live her best life, and he doesn't want this guy holding her back. Or the very worst case scenario that all the siblings are seeing is that if Caleb continues on being unhealthy and super morbidly obese, that maybe Tammy will reverse course and start piling weight back on. And that's the last thing that they want for her. Caleb says all the right things about how he's very motivated and how Tammy loves him and he loves her, blah, 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 blah. Chris says he hopes it's true, but he's just heard things from Tammy that are similar to what he's saying when she was at that same stage and she gave up. So he is very skeptical about this whole thing. Then what's really funny is Chris asks if Caleb has met her alter ego, Queen Tammy. And he says that's what they call her when she shows her ass. And he says she's damn near impossible to deal with when she's in Queen Tammy mode. Caleb insists that he likes a challenge and says that they have a calming influence on each other. But then Chris says Tammy can be a queen bee with a capital B. So he laughs and says that Caleb's probably got some big ass chewings ahead from Tammy, and he just has no idea. He says 2 months is not long enough for him to be knowing nothing about her, really. But he does also say that Caleb seems like a good country boy. But he also says that if Caleb acts the fool at the wedding, that he will object. But he promises not to show his ass until Caleb shows his. So it seems that they are at a good point on Thousand Pound Sisters as we head into scene 9, which is the wedding day. What we see is all the siblings together in the minivan. They've left the hotel together. They are headed over to the rehab facility for the ceremony, and Amanda takes the lead in this conversation. She's anxious. She has questions about his mobility and health because, as we see on the show, Amanda and Misty Slayton were not there yesterday. They came in the night before, so they missed the introduction to Caleb on Thousand Pound Sisters, and they missed their chance to grill him, but they're going to make up for it pretty soon. Amanda jokes around and starts talking about how are Caleb and Tammy going to consummate their marriage. Chris says he doesn't want to think about it. Maybe some viewers don't want to think about it, but it seems like Amanda has given this some serious thought because she starts talking about how they have cranes at the facility to lift people, and then she said it might be like sperm whales mating, and then she makes some noises and slaps her hands together. It's very funny. She doesn't like them rushing the wedding. Chris jokes about them rubbing tracheotomies together and says maybe that's how Tammy will get pregnant. But then that devolves into a conversation where the siblings wonder if that's why there's a rush on the wedding. Then they start wondering, did Tammy find a way to get pregnant? Interestingly, Amy says that after weight loss surgery, a lot of women get pregnant because they had infertility while they were heavy, and then they get weight loss surgery, and then bam, they're pregnant. That's what happened to her. She wasn't planning on it to happen, and it did. So they're kind of worried, and Chris talks about Tammy being able to stand up, and then he says maybe she just backed up on him. So you're going to get all kinds of mental pictures watching this episode. It's very interesting. They also talk about how Tammy's impatient about everything. And now that she's lost some weight, she's rushing into this marriage, and they worry, maybe she'll rush into having a baby. Amanda says it'll be dangerous if she gets pregnant. She's still 450 pounds. She still has more weight to lose. But Chris says, you just never know. And Amy doesn't like this either and says Tammy getting pregnant will F up everything. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Now, the wedding isn't happening on 1,000 Pound Sisters until episode 10. And at the end of episode 9, we get some glimpses and a preview for the wedding day. One thing Tammy asks on her wedding day is that her siblings not run her groom off. Then they all want to confront Tammy and want to know if she's pregnant. And Amanda and Misty sit down with Caleb, and they are going to threaten him with his life. And then everyone gets together for the wedding, and they wonder why Tammy is late. Caleb worries that Tammy might be a runaway bride, and that's on the next episode of 1,000 Pound Sisters. Stay tuned to TLC, and stay tuned right here to Soap Dirt. Be sure and check out our 1,000 Pound Sisters video and podcast and all of our articles at soapdirt.com. Thanks.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.